I know thy works, and tribulation, and poverty, but thou art rich. Welcome to the Black Excellence and Abundance Channel. Out of the four major professional sports in the United States, football, baseball, basketball, and ice hockey, hockey has been the whitest. And this is no accident. Nearly all of the National Hockey League's NHL players are white, and the well-known history of the sport would make people believe that Caucasians created and developed the sport on their own. Well, in this installment of the Black Excellence and Abundance series on sports, we will shed light on a little-known black ice hockey league established some 25 years before the NHL was ever created. While history books showcase white players that date back to the 1800s, the roots of the game actually come from black Native Americans, and the game was revolutionized by African Canadians. Black hockey players were critical in taking the game that was primitive and helped create what we see today. According to the book Black Ice, written by George and Darrell Fausty, the sons and grandsons of American slaves who escaped to Canada were not given the proper credit for innovating the game. The first reports of hockey being played dates back to 1815 along the Northwest Arm, which is a river south of Halifax in Canada. At that time, the region was not home to a large white settlement, but was instead the site of a small black enclave. Reports say that the residents would play hockey in the winter months, when the river froze over. It is unknown whether or not these were the first ice hockey games, but it does mean that blacks were playing the sport well before it became popular in the late 1800s. As the development of the sport into contemporary ice hockey took place, the first organized indoor game was in Montreal in 1875, and by the mid-1890s, there were hundreds of teams in Canada and Europe. At this time, there was the first recorded mention of all-black hockey teams, which appeared in 1895. By 1900, the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes, CHL, was created, and it was headquartered in Halifax, Nova Scotia. The CHL was initially a church league formed by black Baptist ministers and church administrators who wanted to use the league to help blacks climb up the social ladder and gain equal footing with the white community. They used sports as a catalyst. The league was based on faith and emphasized sportsmanship and athleticism over brute force. The league also used the Bible as their rule book. The league featured more than 400 African Canadian players who were typically natives from Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island. As the game continued to develop, the CHL featured more faster-paced action on the offense end of the rink than the white leagues, which played a more physical style of game. It has been reported that the slap shot, which has been a staple for more than a century, was first used in the CHL about 50 years before it became popular in the NHL. The league also revolutionized the goaltender position by allowing the goalie to play in an upright position, which allowed him to use his feet to a much greater degree. At times, the top black teams were able to defeat the best white teams. Typically, there would not be a rematch, and those victories were not well publicized. The Colored Hockey League, or the CHL, flourished until World War I. The innovations that came out of the league were later credited to white players, and the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto did not recognize the accomplishments of the league. The most noted moment of blacks in hockey happened when Willie O'Ree
broke the color barrier in the NHL in 1958, even though black players greatly contributed to the game years before the NHL existed. Willie O'Ree is considered the Jackie Robinson of the NHL.
Our knowledge of the roots of Canadian hockey has been based almost solely on historical records maintained by early white historians. Because of this, the misconception that hockey is a white man's innovation and invention has persisted. We now know today such an assumption could not be further from historical fact. The roots of early Canadian hockey originate with the North American Indians. The roots of modern Canadian hockey originate in large part from the influence of an even more surprising source, that of early African Canadian hockey, where it was black hockey players in the latter half of the 19th century whose style of play and innovations helped shape the sport, effectively changing the game of hockey forever.
Established in Nova Scotia in 1895, the Colored Hockey League was comprised of black hockey players from leagues across the Maritimes. It is widely considered as the first league to allow goalies to drop to their knees to stop a puck, a rule which was later adopted by the NHL. The CHL is the first league to see a player execute a slap shot. Those two innovations are a mainstay in the NHL today: the slap shot and the goalie dropping to his knees to stop a puck. Prior to the colored hockey leagues, those moves had not been seen by any other players in any other league of hockey. With certainty, we can date black hockey to the early 1870s, yet we know that hockey and black history in Nova Scotia has parallel roots, going back more than 100 years. Among the first reports of hockey being played occurred in 1815 along the isolated northwest arm of South Halifax. Four black families, originally from the Chesapeake Bay area, with a total of 15 children, had relocated and settled on the arm. It is reported that these families, the County, Williams, Monroe, and Lille, received adequate food, lodging, employment, implying that their children were healthy and would be able to play hockey during the winter months when the arm was frozen and suitable for skating. These children were among the first Canadians to play the game of ice hockey.
During the 19th century, it had been the English who had introduced the concept of competitive sports to much of the world. In an age of the Victorians and Victorian ideals, sports were regarded as models of teamwork and fair play. Many believed that sports could raise the lower classes and non-white races to a higher level of civilization and social development. All was well, the theory held as long as white men continued to win at whatever sport they played. Hockey was no different. By recognizing Canadian hockey, Stanley had accomplished something more. He had given the game royal acceptance, removing its status as a game of the lowly masses and only creating a tiered sport based on club elitism and commercialism. It is no secret that the Stanley Cup was only to be competed for by select teams within Canada. At the time of its presentation, it was a symbol of self-promotion, all the while serving a supposed need. In time, those who controlled the Challenge Cup controlled hockey, effectively creating a bourgeois sport, a sport that now, by its very nature, would exclude and fail to recognize black contributions.
The first mention of all black hockey teams appeared in 1895. The games between black club teams were arranged by formal invitation only. By the 1900s, the colored hockey leagues of the Maritimes had been created, headquartered in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Despite hardships and prejudice, the league would exist until the mid-1920s. Historically speaking, the colored league was like no other hockey league in sports league before or since. Primarily located in a province reputed to be the birthplace of Canadian hockey, The league would in time produce a quality of player and athlete that will rival the best of white Canada. The teams were so skilled that they will be seen as worthy candidates for local representation in the annual national quest for Canadian hockey's ultimate prize, the Stanley Cup. Make no mistake about it, these players were not just good, they were elite. And had they not been locked up, who knows what type of Stanley Cup records they would have set.
You see, folks, the truth shall set us free. Today, there are no monuments to the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes. There is no reference to the league in any but a few books on hockey. There is no reference to Henry Sylvester Williams, James Johnston, James Kinney, or the scores of players who wore the Colored League uniforms. There is no reference in the Hockey Hall of Fame of the impact that blacks had in the development of the modern game of hockey. No reference to the black origin of the slap shot. There is no reference to the black origin of the offensive style of goal play exhibited by Franklin. There is no reference to the black origin of goalies going down on ice in order to stop the puck. There is no reference to the black practice of entertaining the crowds with a halftime show. It is as if the league had never existed, for hockey is today a sport wider in history than a Canadian winter.
As we enter a new hockey season, let us understand that black men playing hockey, it is not a novelty. It is not something new. In fact, this legacy goes back for more than 100 years, and we indeed revolutionized the game of ice hockey.
Thanks for watching. As always, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And remember, thou art rich.